everyone. Welcome to a special interview here with a Syracuse broadcaster from the past and a guy who hopes to call some games for Syracuse in the future. Ian Nicholas, joined by current ESPN play-by-play man, Drew Carter. Drew, it's been a crazy week for you. How are you doing? In Connecticut right now, but in a few days' time, you'll be back at your stomping ground at Syracuse, calling Cuse-Liberty. Tell me how you're doing with your new gig.
I'm great, man. I mean, I don't know if this video is going to be anywhere, Ian, but I'm smiling ear to ear. And that's basically been my default setting ever since I got the assignment, Cuse-Liberty. So as you said, I work for ESPN. The first 3 weeks I've been in Wake Forest, so Winston-Salem for the Wake Forest Old Dominion game to start, then back in Bristol for another Wake Forest game, crazily. Then I did a high school game in Arizona, and now I'm going to my alma mater, Syracuse. So driving up there Thursday should be a ton of fun. I think I'm going to be emotional for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's wild. I haven't been back to Central New York since I graduated in 2019, but we're fired up, man. It should be a fun game on Friday night. The dome's going to be jumping, so we're going to have a good time.
It will be. So you mentioned you got the assignment. Did you get the assignment before the season, but you knew you were going to head to Syracuse in week 4, or is it just when did you find out that Cuse-Liberty would be on your plate alongside Bobby and the rest of your crew?
So I found out actually in the Phoenix airport when I landed Thursday.
Wow.
So last Thursday I found out. It's crazy how I did. I hadn't checked my email yet because I'd been on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
And my buddy Rich, who is a spotter and spotted for me week 1 in Winston-Salem,
Mm-hmm.
he had already seen the schedule because he had checked his email.
All right.
And he called me and he said, "You got the assignment." Because he and I had talked about it before. And he was like, "I think you're going to do that game because, you've already done a Friday ACC Network game. It seems like they kind of like you in that spot. And Syracuse is playing Liberty Friday. Maybe you'll get it. And if you do, I want a spot for you." So it ended up working out really well. So that's long story short. I found out Thursday and my buddy Rich called me and I basically had like an emotional, happy breakdown in the middle of the Phoenix airport. I was so stoked to do this game.
So before we touch on that crazy game that you did cover between Hamilton and Bishop Gorman, just tell me how, difficult will it be for you? Obviously, play-by-play, national level, you got to play it down the middle.
Yeah.
Will you be the guy who says you're a Syracuse alum first, or you think it's going to be Bobby or somebody else in the crew who will say, "Hey, I think you've been here before"? Or are you going to let it slip?
No, Ian, if we were putting betting odds on first person to mention that I did go to Syracuse, I am a huge underdog. I'm not going to say it. I would say Bobby is probably the favorite to say it first.
Okay.
Because Bobby, I think, likes to bust my balls a little bit. So I would say he's like probably plus 150 to say it first.
Okay.
And then Taylor Davis on the sidelines.
Yep.
She also might say it. I don't think she'll say it on the air, but she and I have talked about it because she is an Auburn alum and she's done games at Jordan-Hare Stadium. So she kind of knows the territory. She knows like what I'm going to be going through Friday night, basically. So she might say it. I think Bobby will mention it first. Now, I did think about wearing an orange tie on the air. It did cross my mind. And in fact, I'd say that was the plan until about Monday of this week when I realized I don't think I should do that. We are on ACC Network, so it's okay to slant a little bit to the ACC team, but don't want to be too over the top. So I think I'm going to play it neutral with the color scheme, and I will certainly play it neutral with the call. I mean, that's a great thing, Ian, as I'm sure you're already learning and you will learn at Syracuse, is it's not like a normal student radio station where you're going to be so excited if Syracuse wins. We do this, we do that, Syracuse is we. That's not what you learn when you're at SU. When you're on student radio, you're obviously a little slanted toward the Cuse, but it's mostly objective. And so that's just what I've taken into the real world. And hopefully we'll do a decent job of Friday night. I'm going to try not to cheer too hard when Syracuse scores, if they score.
Well, I'll probably be in the dome watching, so I won't be able to critique you there, but I'll make sure to watch the game, make sure you're not too much of a homer. So you mentioned the radio stations we have here at Syracuse, and I'm trying to get involved in all of them. Tomorrow morning, I plan to wake up at 5 a.m. You know the drill, WAER, where you were the assistant sports director. So just tell me a little bit about your experience here as a broadcaster, and not just what you learned in the classroom, but everyone talks about how legendary Citrus TV is, WAER is, Z89 is a great place to grow and develop as a broadcaster as well. Tell me how that was, and also working with kids who wanted to do just what you did, and a lot of them have already gone on to do amazing things just like yourself. But just tell me, those years, especially when you got to call those big games, you're junior and senior years. Just tell me how special those moments were and how they prepared you to call these games at this level.
Yeah, no, those 4 years, Ian, were four of the best of my life. And everyone says it about their college experience. But Syracuse is so unique, dude. I mean, if you want to be, you can basically be a professional as a college student. I mean, if you think about it, you said a couple of the moments we had when we were upperclassmen, going to Cameron Indoor Stadium and calling a game and seeing Syracuse upset Duke when they had Zion and RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish in overtime, going to Orlando and knocking off West Virginia in the Camping World Bowl for Syracuse's first 10-win season in 2 decades or something. Going to Clemson and watching Syracuse almost pull off an upset for the ages against Trevor Lawrence, who got knocked out in the first half. Like, stuff like that is just, it's bananas when you think about it, that we get to do that as students. It's just wild. And, I feel so fortunate and so blessed that I was able to do all that stuff. And the really special thing about Syracuse is, if you ask any athlete who's retired, what do they miss most? They're always going to say the same thing. And it's the camaraderie. It's the relationships with the players and coaches in the locker room. I was just listening to JJ Redick yesterday. He had his retirement episode of his podcast. And he said, of course, and we all knew he was going to say it, the thing I'll miss most is the relationships with my teammates and coaches. And so it's cliched what I'm about to say, but really the most special part about Syracuse is the people you're doing it with. Those moments I mentioned in Orlando and in Durham and in Clemson, they were really cool moments and awesome things to do as a sports fan, but especially special and especially cool because I was doing it with my best friends. And those guys are still my best friends to this day. Last month, went to Pinehurst in North Carolina and played golf with all of them.
Wow.
Yesterday, my friend James and I played a golf course in Tenafly, New Jersey, which is down by New York City. Like, we're still so tight. And I think it's because we're also like-minded. That's the thing about Syracuse is everyone there really wants to be great. That's why I say, if you want to be a professional type broadcaster when you're still a student, you can do it. The opportunities are there. The competition is there. And, people ask me, like, was it super competitive? And, how do you end up getting on the air? And the answer is yes, it's competitive, but in a healthy way. That's why I feel lucky to be a part of my class, the class of 2019, because it was never bitter. There was never any venom or anger based on, you got this game and I didn't. Yeah. We love each other and we're still best friends. And we always wanted to push each other to be better, no matter what avenue we were doing it. If it was AER, if it was Citrus, if it was Z, if it was ACC basketball against Louisville in prime time, or if it was a field hockey game against School of the Blind and Deaf out of Brooklyn. I don't know. Like, it didn't matter. We all cared so much about the craft, and we still do, that it's honestly a bit of a wake-up call once you leave that setting and you're like, not everyone is wired this way, And so I was really, really lucky to be surrounded by people who just cared and pushed me every day.
Yeah, I can definitely tell. Obviously, you really see how many talented people there are here. But again, they're all on the same page and they all really care about each other. And it helps when you all like golf and can all play golf. You have something to bond over.
Yeah, exactly.
So I assume you wanted to go to Syracuse for a while. I know you're from Minnesota. You have the Timberwolves mug. You have a Timberwolves pennant on the wall. Did you know you wanted to be a Newhouse? Yeah, there it is. Or is it a basketball hoop? Is that
it's a hoop. It's a little mini.
Okay.
Hoop. Yeah, there we go. It's the only decoration I have in my new apartment right now, but it's the best.
It fits.
Yeah.
So I assumed you wanted to be a Newhouse student for a while because that's a big trek to make from Minnesota all the way to, the middle of New York. Or when did you know that sports broadcasting was something that could actually be a career for you? And then when did you get to the point where you realized Newhouse was a place where you maybe wanted to be?
Yeah, it's a really good question because being in Minnesota, Syracuse kind of came out of nowhere at the end, I would say, of my high school experience. Mm-hmm. So my mom and I actually were watching a Syracuse hoops game on ESPN. I think it was a sophomore in high school. And she was like, that place looks kind of fun. You ever thought about going to Syracuse? I was like, no. But orange is my favorite color.
Okay.
I joke about that, like, oh, it worked out. Orange is my favorite color. But in the moment, I was like, maybe this is kind of meant to be. I do love orange. That's their mascot. She's right. It does look pretty fun at the Carrier Dome on this basketball game. I think CJ Fair was on the team at that point. They were really good. I was like, that does look really fun. I'm going to look into it. So fast forward, and then I decided what I wanted to do, which was sports media of some kind. I actually wanted to be a writer when I left high school and went to college. But I was just Googling, best journalism schools in the country, and Syracuse, as you know, Ian, I'm sure you did the same thing, just kept popping up at the top of every list. And so I decided that, based on the fact that it's the best journalism school in the country, and don't let anyone from Arizona State or Ball State or Northwestern or anyone tell you differently.
Anything else.
Syracuse is the best. Based on that, the fact that it had ACC, major college sports that we get a chance to call, based on the alumni network, everything pointed towards Syracuse being perfect. I just had to go check it out because, like you said, I'm from Minnesota, so I had never been there. And then I went my spring break of junior year and just fell in love immediately. I actually had a tour set up for Ithaca College later that day. Yep. And I was like, Dad, just cancel it. Like, I want to be here all day. So I took a tour of Newhouse too. I took like a general Syracuse University tour and then a
Newhouse specific
tour. So just fell in love with it. But honestly, man, I didn't think I would get in because Newhouse is very selective. I think it's a 9% acceptance rate or something. And like in high school, I was not an idiot, but I didn't really take classes that seriously, to be honest. So I didn't think that my grades would be good enough to get in. Somehow I lucked out, maybe my mom bribed the admissions office. I'm not sure, but I ended up getting in, and it was the best possible thing for me. Cause like I talked about, it's not even the classes necessarily that make that place so special. It's everything you can do on the side, which really became my main course. I thought that the classes would be the entree and the extracurriculars would be like the side dishes. For me, it was reverse, which my professors probably hated. But my main course was doing the things that I knew would translate to the real world. And that stuff was just so special. And there's no better place to do it. I honestly believe that.
Yeah, it's already become part of my life as well. I plan to head back down to Citrus tonight, be a part of Orange Countdown. And there's so many great shows. You mentioned you wanted to be a writer. So when did you realize that maybe play-by-play was the avenue you wanted to go down? Obviously, you just worked for 2 years with CBS 42 in Birmingham, Alabama, where you were not doing play-by-play. You were doing in-studio reporting and out in the field. So that's a different thing for you. And obviously here you were calling games on radio, calling games TV style, and you're doing in-studio work for Citrus. So when did you realize, with doing all of those extracurriculars, when did play-by-play maybe stand out as your passion for what you want to do long term?
Yeah, it took a while. So like I said, wanted to be a writer when I got there. Two kind of random events led to me wanting to do broadcasting. Number one, I've mentioned my mom now 3 times. So shout out to her. That's the third one. Shout out Amanda Carter.
It works.
She basically said, you need to choose a major. And I was like, I don't care. I got into Newhouse. I don't care. Like, I'm just excited to go there. Anything's fine. The major, I didn't even realize I'd have to choose one. I thought Newhouse was the major.
Newhouse.
Yeah. And so she's like, no, you have to choose one. And so we did a little research and we found that most of the famous alumni from SU, and it seems like the program with, I guess, the most prestige around it was the broadcast journalism program. So I was like, I think I want to write, but let's just do this for now. And then I can write for the Daily Orange or whatever. So that was one. And then 2, wild turn of events where my random freshman year roommate, this guy, Kyle from the Jersey Shore, his mom was the flower girl in the wedding of Dennis Denninger, who you're going to learn a lot about Dennis Denninger. He's a professor in the Falk School at Syracuse. He's like a broadcasting Yoda kind of guy. He knows it all. He's been in the industry forever. He was at ESPN for 25 years, discovered Chris Fowler, all this stuff. So he's at SU. My buddy Kyle said, if you want to meet him, like, we can go meet him. Standing outside of his office, I meet this guy named Jay Alter, who currently works for ESPN. Yep. So Jay was a senior when I was a freshman. Jay says, hey, come to the general interest meeting for WAER. I'm the sports director over there. I said, sure. And the rest is history. I decided I loved AER, got involved with Citrus, got involved with Z, hated the Daily Orange. I'm just kidding. I did write one byline for the DO, but we're supposed to hate them as broadcast guys. Hated the DO and decided that I wanted to do broadcasting. But still, I didn't think play-by-play was for me. Like, at that AER general interest meeting, I went to the talk side because I didn't think I could do play-by-play. I never tried it. You hear people at Syracuse, Ian, and maybe you're one of these guys who are like, yeah, like, I was watching a game when I was 5 years old and I put it on mute and I do the play-by-play. I went to a broadcasting camp when I was 13 years old. And then I was the voice of my high school football team. You get a lot of people at Cuse like that. I was not like that. So I didn't think that play-by-play was for me, but I was lucky to have a mentor who said, just try it. Go into a studio, call a game into a microphone, or even go to Sadler Hall, one of the breakout rooms, and call it into your laptop and send it to me, and I'll give you a critique and just try it. And so I did it once, got some notes back, did it again, built it up. The goal was to be ready to call a game once you got on the air at WAER. And I think that's what we achieved. And I decided that I just love play-by-play because, you know, we all get into the industry because we're not good enough to play sports professionally, right? That's how everyone feels. Like we just love sports so much, but we can't play them. And I think play-by-play is the closest thing to playing them because you're in the moment, it's live, it's intense. You can break a sweat if you want to, if you're really involved. So I love play-by-play. And then, you know, it's live, it's 2.5, 3 hours. And then after that, you're done and you can go grab a beer with your color guy. It's just, I think it's the most team and most like you're playing in a game environment of anything in broadcasting.
Yeah, and you have a role as the play-by-play guy, not necessarily to be the star, especially on TV, but to be the, just directing traffic and, making the big moments even more special, I guess you could say. And speaking of intense moments, Drew, you had a situation last week where you had a wild one. And I don't know how much you knew about Bishop Gorman beforehand. Maybe you could tell us a little bit how much you knew about their powerhouse program. And you tweeted after the game, this is exhibit A of why you never tune out of a game. But tell me, it's 24/7 with a minute and a half left. How are you feeling? How are you feeling after the field goal that made it 24-10? And just describe the final minute of the game and how you as the play-by-play guy had to handle the sudden shift of this is a blowout, this is a blowout to we have something magical happening right here.
Yeah, that's a great question, Ian, because it is a shift for sure. That's the right way to describe it. It is a shift. And it's not just a shift from this is a blowout to this is a close game. It's also a shift in the sense that when you're doing those national high school games, if we're being honest, ESPN isn't showing those games because of the game itself. ESPN is really showing those games because of the stars. And hey, You're going to see these guys play on Saturday and potentially Sunday. We're selling the stars. That's a big reason why. I mean, if it's a great game, that's a little added bonus. But really the reason is to talk about the studs on both teams. You mentioned Bishop Gorman is a powerhouse. They've got a lot of them. They've got 7 guys in the top 300 on ESPN over the next 2 years. DeMarco Murray went there. They've got a ton of studs. Cody Bellinger, I think, is a Bishop Gorman guy. Wow. Or Joey Gallo is. Cody Bellinger went to the school they were playing, Hamilton, Arizona, which is another powerhouse. But if you were to put a line on the game, Gorman would have been favored. They were the number 7 team in the country, and Hamilton was unranked based on where you looked. So Gorman comes out, and after the first drives, Gorman's dominating. It's 24-7, like you said, with 1:10 remaining. And so Hamilton brings out the kicker to kick a 46-yarder, which for high school is a big kick. It might as well be a 65-yarder in the NFL. And I was assuming at that point that they just wanted to give the kid a crack, and basically keep him warm for next week. We had heard from the coach that he had just made a 47-yarder the previous game. So we're like, this guy's got a chance to make this.
Okay.
Kicks the field goal. He makes it. We're like, all right, cool. That's awesome for that kid. If you watch it back, Bobby and I are just BSing about how awesome his mullet is. This kicker's got a glorious mullet. And that's what we were talking about, because that was the most important thing at that point was the mullet. I mean, mullets are always the most important, but the game was a blowout still at that point. Then they kick the onside kick. I'm like, whoa, here we go. Maybe we shouldn't close the book on this game just yet. But still, we're thinking there's no chance because there's a minute left. They would need to score 2 touchdowns. They do score the first touchdown. We don't even call the play. Bobby was making a point, and I didn't even jump in and call the play because the game was still over, we thought at that point. There's 30 seconds left. Kick the extra point, 7-point game. And then the reason I say all this, Ian, is the moment the shift happened in my brain was when they recovered the second onside kick.
Yeah.
Because even before they kicked it, it's so rare that happens. Especially most of us watch NFL and college football way more than high school football too. So high school is interesting because the onside kick rules, I think, differ by state. So it's much easier to recover an onside kick in Arizona than it might be in Vegas or something like that. But somehow Bishop Gorman was not prepared for the second onside kick, and Hamilton recovered the second one. And at that point, we're like, oh my God, this might happen. Yep. It was still unlikely. They still had to go 40 yards in 30 seconds and score the touchdown. And they did it. And this kid, Nico Marchio, who's committed to West Virginia, is puking on the ball as he gets the snap in the shotgun. He's he's got blood down his forearm. He looks like Russell Crowe in Gladiator. And he leads this game tying drive. We thought they score the touchdown. I freak out. The place is going bananas. I mean, I'm just screaming at this point into the microphone. I'm not even like broadcasting anymore. I'm just yelling. And they go for 2, which was awesome. It's like they know that they're undermatched. They know they're the underdogs here. They know that their quarterback is about to like pass out from exhaustion. So Coach Zadebski, this awesome dude who we got to know decently well during the week, is like, screw it, send him. We're going for it. And Marchio runs it in himself. And it was just like the craziest moment I've ever called, I think. Honestly, I can say that, like crazier than anything that happened at Syracuse for sure. So yeah, it was wild, but the shift definitely happened. And it was a twofold shift because it went from blowout to a game, but it also went from let's talk about the stars to, hey, we've got a really classic game on our hands.
So 2 things. First, you stole it, but did you realize in the moment that Marchio threw up on the ball before throwing it, or was it not till afterward? And second, what did you know about his status before the game, illness-wise? Was he that, like, was he really that sick, or was it just evident throughout the game that he was not doing too hot?
I don't know. So we didn't know that he threw up on the ball. We did show him throwing up between plays.
Oh.
But we didn't catch him throwing up mid-play. So that was rare. I didn't see that until I was looking at like TikTok later that night, and I saw someone made one of him.
Yeah.
So didn't know he threw up on the ball, and didn't know he was sick at all. Did that come out? Was he sick before the game?
I thought I saw something that he might have been fighting an illness. I didn't know if there was anything, but I guess from your standpoint, you guys had no clue, or maybe he was fine. It was just the middle of the game thing. It was just stunning.
Yeah, we miss it. So that's the thing is, like, we asked the coaches about injuries we should know about. I met Nico in the locker room on Thursday before the game. He seemed fine to me.
Right.
So we didn't know anything about an injury or a sickness or anything. I just assumed that he was so gassed from the game that he couldn't move and he was throwing up. It'd make a little more sense if he were sick. But after he scored that 2-point conversion, he just laid down in the back of the end zone. And some guy, I still don't know who the guy is who came in and hugged him. I think it was his dad. I mean, I'm guessing it was his dad. But if you see the video, the guy's like on his back of the end zone, and there's a grown man like basically cuddling him back of the end zone, like nursing him back to health. It was wild, man. He like couldn't even walk off the field. It was like we were watching a movie. It was really amazing.
I mean, I don't think we're going to see Dino get on the field and start hugging Tommy DeVito or whatever quarterback is in the game. Let's not even go down that rabbit.
Yeah.
But
hopefully they don't throw up on the ball Friday.
Oh, I mean, it's safe and sound in the dome. I don't think. Also, what's your opinion? Quick take. AC in the dome. Are you going to get used to that? Do you know VAC is there? What do you think?
Yeah, I've heard about it. So it sucks that it's the longest running dad joke of all time. That isn't a joke anymore, that the Carrier Dome doesn't have AC. Every parents' weekend, dude, that joke was made in Syracuse like 50,000 times. Every dad was like, oh, this is a great joke. No AC at the Carrier Dome? That doesn't make much sense, does it? Huh? But can't say that really anymore. I'm excited to see the renovations. I mean, in all honesty, dude, like, it seems like no one has really seen the renovations, or at least didn't see them last year because there were no fans.
Oh.
And so this is a really cool opportunity. I know they've played at home already this year, but playing on Friday night is different. I mean, this is a real opportunity for the program on national TV to kind of establish itself a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And then on the other hand, you speak about programs establishing themselves, and Liberty, a school that doesn't necessarily play high-level competition all the time. This is one of their biggest tests of the year, right? I mean, they've played 3 teams, including Old Dominion, a team you've covered so far this year, and the Wake Old Dominion game. I mean, Liberty, this is a big game for them as well. I mean, they're favored, but they need to pass this test.
Yeah, it is. So Liberty, it's interesting you mentioned that they're favored, Ian, because Hugh Freeze said in his press conference and said to us on our meeting that he doesn't think they should be favored. Now, that's probably just coach speak, but he said a couple times now that he thinks Syracuse has a better roster than Liberty. I'm not totally sure I agree with that. I think Hugh Freeze's whole mantra with his Liberty team is to make them feel like they're still in the FCS. They were as recently as 2017, but they've got this underdog mentality that doesn't really fit for a team that, is receiving votes in the AP and coaches polls and has won 15 of their last 16. But I think that's still how they view themselves. And if you look at their schedule, Syracuse is probably one of the best teams on it. They go to Ole Miss in early November. That's going to be an amazing game. They're at UAB next week, which is a really, really good team in a new stadium down in Birmingham, which we covered down there, obviously. But yeah, I mean, Liberty is really good. Like, they're favored for a reason. And it'd be interesting to see what kind of bowl game they make. But they're kind of, at this point, now that UCF has sort of fallen a little bit from their stature of a few years ago, I would say Liberty is kind of carrying the torch of, I was going to say group of five. They're not in a conference, but they might as well be a group of five team. That's just their public perception. They're kind of carrying the torch now of basically smaller schools trying to make New Year's Six bowls and trying to get some respect. And they're doing a pretty good job of it. I mean, they've got this kid, Malik Willis, who might be the number 1 overall pick. So they are good.
Yeah, you're going to have quite the time covering him and seeing how a really good Syracuse defense will match up with his dual threat ability. And speaking of Syracuse, you're going on ESPN Radio Syracuse tomorrow when you get here. You're in Connecticut right now. You'll be driving to Syracuse tomorrow, as you told me before the interview. But you're probably going to get this question, and I know play-by-play guys, you're not going to maybe you'll mention it on air, but I'm curious. Sean Tucker, he's killing it right now. What is your opinion on, people have opened up the talk about 44, and I'm just bringing it up. People, I'm honest, this has been a dialogue, which at least on campus, it's been a dialogue. You on the outside, I don't know if you've heard it. Well, what do you think? Should 44 be open for the right player? And is Sean Tucker the right guy?
Yeah, so I only laugh, Ian, because I was just joking about my friends Tyler and Tim. I was joking with them about this exact thing because I was building my chart, and just as a joke, I wrote in Sean Tucker's box, "Get him in 44?" ? And I sent it to them because that's the kind of thing they'd love. They'd laugh at that. But then we talked about it on their podcast today, and I'm of the opinion that retiring numbers is kind of stupid anyway. Like, if you want to put a jersey in the rafter, that's great. But let someone wear it. We all can see it. Like, are you a Yankees fan?
I am a Yankees fan.
Okay. First of all, gross. Second of all, you understand what I mean here. The Yankees have retired every single digit number?
Yeah.
That's dumb. Like, what if someone really wants to play for the Yankees and says, it could actually be a difference in free agency. If someone's like, I can wear 3 in Boston and I can't wear it in New York, great. I'll play for the Red Sox. And it's the same thing in recruiting. Like, I don't think anyone, nowadays, kids weren't alive for Jim Brown and Ernie Davis and Floyd Little, rest in peace. But I mean, everyone knows Jim Brown at the very least.
Yes.
And if you tell them, hey, we're giving you this number 44, which means we're investing in you, we're telling our fans this dude is next, I think that could make a difference. I really do. And I think it's, like I said, I always think it's kind of stupid to just keep something sacred just for the point of it being sacred. No one's going to forget Brown, Davis, or Little because Sean Tucker's wearing 44. In fact, I think it'd be cool to remind them of how great those guys were by making it a big deal when you give someone 44. The only reason I would say don't give it to Sean Tucker is because you want to save it for the next recruit, right? But then you get into a gray area where it's like, do you really want to give some high schooler number 44? I mean, that's a lot of weight to bear. What if he busts or something? And then you got this scrub wearing 44. So it's only a number, but there are a lot of different factors at play. I am in favor of bringing it out from, I'm sure that jersey's been collecting dust somewhere in an equipment room. I'm in favor of getting 44 out and sure, give it to Sean Tucker because he seems like the real deal.
He does. First player in program history to have 100 yards rushing and receiving in the same game. Albeit it was against UAlbany, but still he's doing things that no guy has done before. And that is your take on the matter. If he earns it, he earns it. And let's see if 34 becomes 44 in the near future. And one last question, Drew, obviously, there are play-by-play guys who are in the business now who have done it for a long time. And you have a fresher perspective on it. As you mentioned, there are kids who come to Newhouse, and I'll admit, I was one of them. You were pretty much describing me earlier. Outside of a mic at 5 years old, that wasn't me. But I was commentating Madden and 2K to myself, and I did call a ton of games from my high school station. So that was me in a sense. But for you, kind of with an outsider's perspective on play-by-play, you bring the energy of a fan every time you call a game. You love to inject your personality into a game. What was your biggest piece of advice that you've been given maybe on staying authentic or just overall, even if it was with CBS 42 or if it was here at Newhouse? What's the biggest piece you've gotten on how to not only be a good play-by-play guy, but to be authentic in the booth?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just that, Ian. It's just be yourself, and it's easier said than done, right? Because when the light turns on and you're live, the nerves can be pretty strong. I mean, I'm sure I'll feel some at the Carrier Dome. I still feel a little bit nervous before every game, and I hope I never lose that, to be honest with you, because that's what makes it fun. And if you're not nervous, then you probably don't care as much as you should. Like what we do, Ian, is really, really cool, and I hope that we never lose sight of how cool it is. But with that being said, the more comfortable you get on the air, I think the better it is to let your personality show. I would have said that in 1950, but I think now in 2021, it's even more important than ever. Nobody wants to hear buttoned up, tie on tight, play-by-play broadcaster, 2nd down and 3, handoff up the middle. No one really wants to hear that anymore, I think. Look at how successful the Peyton and Eli broadcast has been on ESPN too. They don't even have a play-by-play guy. It's like they're just kind of chopping it up, newsflash, we can see what's happening. We don't really need someone to tell us that there's a handoff up the middle. Now, as play-by-play guys, we still say, what's happening, but it's more about enhancing and it's more about entertaining. So just be yourself, don't try to be Mr. Broadcaster guy, because no one really wants that. People just want to hear, Ian Nicholas or Drew Carter, whoever it is. They want you to just be yourself and your authentic self. Biggest piece of advice I have for anyone in broadcasting is consider the listener or consider the viewer. And that's a great piece of advice I got from Dan Duva, who used to be the voice of the Syracuse Crunch and is a big mentor of mine. And Dan learned that from Marty Glickman, who's kind of the godfather of Syracuse broadcasting. Godfather of broadcasting in general, really. He's the guy who coined slam dunk and alley-oop. Like he was it. And his whole thing was consider the listener, because you don't want to make it about yourself. It's about the viewer. You're doing this for someone else.
Yes.
Maybe that's how we justify talking about sports for a living, as opposed to like trying to cure cancer or like work with a nonprofit or something. But I really do think there's something to it where you can make a difference in someone's life if you teach them something, or if you put a smile on their face, or if maybe you make them feel some type of way emotionally, if the moment calls for that. You really can make a difference. So consider the viewer, consider the listener. And it's important to note that we're talking singular, not consider the listeners or viewers. You want it to be personal, because if you think about it, everybody watching, I mean, you could be watching the Super Bowl with 500 people around you, but everyone is ingesting that broadcast individually. It's an individual experience for all of them. So consider the listener or viewer, put yourself in their shoes and say, what would I want to know right now? What would I want to hear right now? What would make me laugh right now?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I try to remember every time I go on the air.
Those are some great points. Just have a conversation with you, your co-partner, and the viewer. Have them, be a part of the game and be a part of a moment. Thank you so much, Drew, for joining me. And also my favorite, maybe not my favorite call of yours from last week, but the one that really stunned me, Poochie Poochie Wow Wow.
Oh,
Was that in the moment, or was that something you've been waiting to use on a broadcast for a while?
So pitchy pitchy woo woo. I have to correct you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Pitchy woo woo. That's okay.
Tough one.
Pitchy pitchy woo woo is a Scott Van Pelt thing. I don't know if you watch SportsCenter with Scott.
I do watch Scott Van Pelt. I didn't know.
So that's his big thing, especially during bad beats, is when a team is trying the 45 lateral play. He calls that pitchy pitchy woo woo. In the moment, I didn't really have time to explain it, so I just said it.
That's how you describe it.
Woo woo here, and a bunch of people have asked me what it means. It's a straight ripoff from Scott Van Pelt. But quick story on that.
Okay.
I'm glad I work at ESPN because I can make SVP references. I'm obsessed with Scott Van Pelt. Like I record, I think he's the best, and his show is amazing, and the production team on that show is incredible. I'm the guy who records it and watches it the next morning if I'm too tired to watch it at night. So I love SVP, and a lot of the time that love will bleed into the broadcast. I'll say something that I think would make him smile, or something that's a reference from his show. So I called some games for Big Ten Network a couple of years ago, and I made a reference to SVP, and I heard in my ear, hey, like it wasn't like I was getting yelled at or anything, but they're like, hey, SVP is a competitor of BTN. Let's maybe not make a reference to Scott Van Pelt. I'm like, you got it, guys. That makes sense. But now working for the mothership, ESPN,
company man,
I can get away with it. So yeah. So the pitchy pitchy woo. I hope SVP heard it. I hope someone sent it to him because it was a straight rip from him.
It was funny because when I was doing the Little League World Series and we were talking about favorite movies or shows from some of the kids, and one of the kids' favorite shows was Holy Moly. And Holy Moly, the play-by-play guy for, I guess you could call it play-by-play for Holy Moly, is Joe Tessitore. So same thing, company man, you've got to keep it within the lines. Right. But I understand. It was a great reference and it was a great job by you, Drew. I really appreciate it. And you were mentioning some of the people that you looked at and some of the alums when coming to Syracuse. You know, when I was looking to come to Syracuse, you mentioned Jay. Jay was a guy I looked at because he's from my rival town, Darien, Connecticut. They're right next to each other. And he had progressed, went to Syracuse, went to ESPN. Like, that's a dream, right? And then you've just done it as well. And a lot of your colleagues have done it too. But, you know, I saw your reels, I saw his reels, I saw your career. I was like, that's where I want to be. And, you know, you've been a big inspiration to me, and you've probably been a big inspiration to a lot of kids who are probably just a few years younger than you, who look at your career and realize, if I put in the work, maybe this can happen to me. So really appreciate your time. Hopefully I stumble into you over these next few days. You know, I hope you feel good and welcomed back on campus, and best of luck in that primetime spot, Liberty, Syracuse. A lot of eyes will be tuned in.
Thank you, man. That means a lot, Ian. It really does. Because, you know, Syracuse is a pipeline. So there are a lot of guys I look up to. And, you know, if there's anything I can do to help you guys, just let me know. I'm sure you're not old enough to drink yet, but I was going to say we could go to Fagan's maybe.
Well, you know, freshman. So, you know, I'm only 18, Drew. But regardless, you know, maybe in a few years' time we can do that. But sure. I hope I really get the chance to run into you. And I'm actually calling a game for CNY Stream. Was CNY Stream a thing when you were here?
It was.
It was. So I'm calling a game for CNY Stream that night. But hopefully I can come for the second half of the Liberty game, and we'll see. Yeah. But, you know, regardless, have fun after the game. Syracuse win or loss. And thanks so much for joining me, man.
It's great. I don't care. I'm a neutral broadcaster.
Neutral broadcaster.
Thanks, Ian. Appreciate you, buddy.
That's true.